Brandon Swanson was just 19 years old, a young man with his whole life ahead of him. He was a student at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canby, Minnesota. On May 13, 2008, he was celebrating the end of the spring semester with his friends. It was a night of joy, a night of looking forward to the future. No one could have known it would be his last. After the celebrations wound down, Brandon got into his green Chevrolet Lumina and started the drive home to Marshall, Minnesota. It was a familiar route, about 30 miles long, but on this particular night, something went terribly wrong on that dark rural road. The drive should have been straightforward, but in the early hours of May 14th, Brandon's car veered off the road and ended up in a ditch. This wasn't a major crash. The car was stuck, but Brandon was unhurt. Like any young person in trouble, he reached for his cell phone. He called his parents, Annette and Brian Swanson, at 1:54 a.m. He told them what happened. He wasn't panicked. He just needed a ride. He told them he was near Lind, a small town in Lyon County. His parents got out of bed, got into their truck, and set out to find their son, keeping him on the phone the whole time. The plan was simple. Brandon would stay on the line and use his cell phone to flash his lights, guiding his parents to his location. Brian and Annette drove to the area Brandon described. They flashed their lights back, hoping to see his in return. But there was nothing. They drove up and down the gravel roads near Lind, but they couldn't see Brandon or his car. Brandon couldn't see them either. There was confusion and growing frustration. They were all in the same general area, talking on the phone, yet they were completely invisible to one another. The night was dark, and the landscape was flat and open, which made their inability to connect even more baffling. As the minutes ticked by, it became clear that Brandon was not where he thought he was. The landscape he described didn't quite match the area around Lind. He was on a gravel road, he could hear water running nearby, and he could see lights from what he thought was Lind. His parents, however, saw none of these landmarks where they were. The simple act of picking up their son had turned into a frustrating and confusing search game in the dead of night. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of a mystery that would stretch on for years. A mystery that started with a simple, common problem: a car in a ditch. Frustration began to mount on both ends of the phone line. Brandon decided he would leave his car. He told his parents he was going to walk towards the lights he could see, which he believed were coming from Lind. His father, Brian, told him to head toward a friend's house in Lind, giving him a specific destination to aim for. Brandon agreed. He got out of his car and started walking along the gravel roads. He described his surroundings to his parents as he walked. He mentioned passing fences and hearing water. He seemed calm, just focused on getting to a place where his parents could finally find him and take him home. The call with his parents lasted for 47 minutes. That's a long time. For 47 minutes, Brian and Annette were connected to their son by a fragile electronic signal. They listened to the sound of his footsteps on the gravel. They heard the wind. They were his only companions on that lonely walk through the dark Minnesota farmland. They continued driving around, trying to coordinate their locations, honking their horn, hoping he would hear it. But their voices over the phone were the only thing connecting them. The entire time, Brandon never sounded distressed or afraid. He was just a young man walking, determined to get to the lights in the distance. This phone call is the most critical and haunting piece of evidence in the entire case. It provides a real-time account of Brandon's last known moments. He was talking, he was moving, he was actively trying to be found. His parents were his lifeline. They were listening, guiding him, reassuring him that they were on their way. The conversation was mundane in its purpose, but has become profound in its significance. Every word spoken, every background noise heard has been analyzed countless times. For 47 minutes, Brandon Swanson was not lost. He was just in the wrong place, and his parents were coming for him. Then, suddenly, the call took a terrifying turn. After 47 minutes of walking and talking, Brandon let out a curse. His father, Brian, heard him yell, "Oh, shh!" And then the line went dead. Just like that. Silence. Brian tried calling back immediately, again and again, but there was no answer. The phone went straight to voicemail. In that single, abrupt moment, the connection was severed. The reassuring voice of their son was replaced by an empty, echoing silence. The 47-minute conversation, which had been a beacon of hope, had ended with a cry of surprise or pain, leaving his parents alone in their truck in the middle of a dark, empty night. After the call dropped, Brian and Annette Swanson continued their desperate search. calling Brandon's phone repeatedly with no success. They drove around for hours until the sun began to rise. With the first light of dawn, they finally called the police to report their son missing. The search officially began. The first major break came not from a sighting, but from cell phone tower records. The data showed that Brandon's last call had pinged a tower near Porter, Minnesota, about 25 miles away from Lind, where he claimed to be. This was a critical piece of information. It meant everyone had been looking in the wrong place. Armed with this new information, the search shifted to the area between Taunton and Porter. It didn't take long for sheriff's deputies to find Brandon's Chevrolet Lumina. It was discovered in a ditch off a gravel road along the Lincoln and Lyon County line. The car was just as he had described, stuck but not badly damaged. The location was surrounded by vast open fields and was near the Yellow Medicine River. This discovery confirmed that Brandon had been confused about his location, but it did nothing to explain where he had gone after he started walking. The car was there, but Brandon Swanson had vanished. The search that followed was one of the largest in Minnesota's history. Hundreds of volunteers, law enforcement officers, and multiple K-9 units scoured the area. They searched on foot, on all-terrain vehicles, and from the air with helicopters. The search dogs were brought in to pick up a scent. Several different dog teams followed a trail leading away from Brandon's car. The trail followed field roads and wandered for about 3 miles. It led them through fields, past an abandoned farm, and along the banks of the Yellow Medicine River. Then, at the river's edge, the trail went cold. Every dog team lost the scent at the same spot. Despite the massive effort, not a single piece of physical evidence was ever found. No cell phone, no keys, no clothing, no sign of a struggle. The search of the Yellow Medicine River was extensive, with dive teams probing its waters, but they found nothing. It was as if Brandon Swanson simply walked to the edge of the river and evaporated into thin air. The landscape was open and agricultural, not a dense forest where someone could easily get lost and remain hidden. How could a person and all of his belongings disappear so completely from such an open area? This is the question that haunts this case to this day. When a person vanishes without a trace, theories begin to emerge to fill the void. The most widely accepted theory is that Brandon Swanson accidentally fell into the Yellow Medicine River. He was on the phone, disoriented, and walking in the dark. The river in that area can have strong currents, especially in the spring. His final cry of "Oh shh!" could have been his reaction as he slipped down a steep bank and into the cold, fast-moving water. This would explain why the search dogs lost his scent at the river's edge and why his body has never been found, as it could have been carried far downstream or become trapped beneath debris. Another theory is that Brandon met with foul play. Could he have stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to see? Perhaps an illegal activity taking place on one of the abandoned farmsteads in the area. In this scenario, his final words might have been a reaction to encountering another person. However, there is absolutely no evidence to support this. There were no signs of a struggle near his car or along the path the dogs followed. No one had any known reason to harm Brandon. While it can't be completely ruled out, most investigators believe an accident is far more likely than a random, violent encounter in the middle of rural Minnesota. A third possibility, though less likely, is that Brandon succumbed to the elements. He was not dressed for a long walk in the cool spring night. Hypothermia can set in quickly and cause confusion and poor judgment. He might have sought shelter in an old barn or outbuilding and died there, remaining undiscovered. However, the search of the area was incredibly thorough. Every abandoned structure, every ditch, and every grove of trees was checked multiple times. For his body to have been missed seems improbable, though not impossible. This theory doesn't fully explain the sudden end to the phone call, or why the K-9 trail ended so abruptly at the river. Finally, some people have wondered if Brandon chose to disappear. Could he have staged the entire event to start a new life? This seems the least plausible theory of all. He was a happy young man with strong ties to his family and was excited about his future. His parents were on the phone with him, and he was actively trying to be found by them. There is no indication that he was unhappy or wanted to run away. The circumstances of his disappearance, a car in a ditch, a 47-minute call for help, point away from a planned vanishing and toward a sudden, unforeseen tragedy that cut his journey short in the most mysterious way. The disappearance of Brandon Swanson is so perplexing because it happened in plain sight, yet left behind no clues. This wasn't a case of someone lost in a vast, remote wilderness. He was in the middle of farmland on a grid of gravel roads, talking to his parents on a cell phone. He was actively providing a real-time narrative of his last moments. The very technology that should have helped locate him, his cell phone, became the source of the mystery's central conflict. It connected him to his parents but gave them the wrong location, sending them on a futile search 25 miles away from where he actually was. The case continues to fascinate and haunt people, because it feels like it could happen to anyone. A simple mistake, taking a wrong turn, getting your car stuck, spiraled into an unsolvable mystery. The abrupt end to the phone call is the story's chilling climax. One moment he is there, a voice on the line, walking toward safety. The next, he is gone. That single, final utterance is a blank canvas onto which we project our worst fears. The slip, the fall, the unexpected confrontation. It's the sound of a life hitting a sudden and final obstacle, and we are left to wonder forever what that obstacle was. His parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, have never given up hope. Their advocacy led to the passage of Brandon's Law in Minnesota in 2009. This law requires law enforcement to begin a search for a missing adult under dangerous circumstances without the previously required waiting period. They turned their personal tragedy into a tool that could help save others. Their strength and persistence are a testament to their love for their son. They continue to search, to hope, and to wait for an answer that may never come. Their fight for Brandon keeps his memory alive and reminds us that behind every headline is a family torn apart by uncertainty. The mystery of what happened to Brandon Swanson remains locked in the silence of that Minnesota night. He walked out of his car and into a mystery that has endured for over a decade. He was so close to being found, just a voice on the phone, a few miles from help. Yet, he crossed a threshold into the unknown, leaving behind only questions. We are left with the echo of his father's voice calling his name into a dead phone line. What truly happened in that final second on the phone? What terror or accident prompted his last cry before the line went silent forever?